American philosopher and neuroscientist Sam Harris was asked why so many former atheists are suddenly becoming Christians. His answer is very revealing.
What you have in the case of many people is the argument that we as a society need an attachment to Christianity to resist the slide into a secular wasteland of meaninglessness. I reject that idea. But even if it were true, it wouldn't give you any reason to believe that Jesus was born of a virgin or rose from the dead. Anyone who's making these particular claims just strikes me as someone who doesn't know how to meditate on some level. If you think that you need to believe something about the divine origin of a book in order to get the juice out of life, there's certain experiences you obviously haven't had.
What's interesting is that Sam never even entertains the idea that these thinkers might be converting because Christianity is true. He reframes all of it as psychological and cultural, as if adults who have spent decades in rational inquiry suddenly switch worldviews because they're scared or nostalgic or bored. But that's simply not how thoughtful people come to faith. Conversions are rarely that simple. There's intellectual conviction, moral clarity, spiritual experience, existential longing, and personal transformation. Christianity is not a coping mechanism. It speaks to the entire human person. And if we're going to talk about motivation, then we need to also talk about both sides, because there are just as many reasons for wanting God to exist as there are for reasons to not want him to exist. Aldous Huxley, a secular icon and thinker of the past, admitted this. He famously said, "I had motives for not wanting the world to have meaning, and consequently, I assumed that it had none. For myself, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom." In other words, motivation cuts both ways. So simply pointing to someone's psychological needs proves nothing. Then Sam goes on to say that people adopt Christianity only because they haven't meditated enough. Meditation can certainly calm your mind, but it can't tell you what's true. It simply heightens awareness, but it cannot ground morality. It can create experience, but it cannot explain that experience. These conversions are not happening because people need a crutch, they're psychologically motivated in some way, or they just don't understand things and want to use God to fill in those gaps. It's happening because secularism doesn't go far enough. As brilliant as Sam is, he assumes that human beings are perfectly self-contained and can simply generate everything they need from within themselves. But by his own worldview, we're nothing but neurons firing in our brains. So ultimately, we can't even trust the very things we're thinking, let alone just produce meaning, morality, purpose, all just from within ourselves. And that is exactly why these conversions are happening, because the secular story is running out of explanations, and Christianity simply makes sense of the world.